Investigating the stories that matter to you. Live from Columbia in high definition. This is WIS News 10.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for being with us. I'm Dondi Mercer-Plank.
Glad to have you with us for WIS News 10 at 5. I'm Judy Gatson. Our top story today, first at 5, a member of the City of Columbia Police Department's command staff has now been fired. That is according to our Megan Norman, who's interviewing city officials right now. He claims that this is all because he reported a plot within the City of Columbia Police Department.
This weekend, Captain David Navarro sat down with WIS. According to an affidavit, he says he was approached months ago by then Deputy Police Chief Ruben Santiago. Navarro says he was asked to help set up Assistant City Manager Allison Baker to get fired. Jody Barr joins us now with more on how that was going to take place.
Well, it was outlined, according to Captain Dave Navarro, in a conspiracy where Ruben Santiago, over the course of between 6 to 8 months, sat down with him. Navarro says 3 times. Last night, Navarro sat down with me to talk about a conspiracy to frame a top city official. 5 days ago, Captain Dave Navarro walked out of the Columbia Police Department suspended without pay after he says he made a phone call to SLED. Navarro says Interim Chief Ruben Santiago tried to wrap him up in a conspiracy to frame Assistant City Manager Allison Baker. Why are you under suspension right now?
Because I told the truth. I told on Ruben Santiago.
Why do you think that?
Because the police department is corrupt. The police department is corrupt. Right now, they're buying time to try to fabricate something the same way Chief Ruben Santiago wanted to place a stolen gun and cocaine on Mr. Baker's car, Assistant City Manager Mr. Baker. He's trying to buy time to see what he can dig on David Navarro and David Navarro's family.
City Manager Teresa Wilson still has not told us why the city suspended Captain Navarro or if he still has a job.
I called her on the phone and I was able to talk to her. I gave her specific that Acting or Interim Chief Ruben Santiago was planning to put a stolen gun and cocaine in Mr. Baker, one of the assistant managers, Allison Baker's car. And he was planning to put this in his car himself.
Navarro says Wilson told him she'd talk with him about the allegations the next day. Navarro says that never happened, and the response from city leaders surprised him.
It was not one that I expected, and it was not one that the citizens of Columbia deserve.
We caught Wilson reporting to work at 10:15 this morning. Were you contacted by Captain Navarro?
I have a meeting at 10 o'clock. I'll be happy to talk with you a little bit later.
After initially agreeing to interview about this story, Wilson refused to go on camera with me and never returned my call to her office. Allison Baker, the man Navarro says was the target of the conspiracy, is head of the city's public safety departments. He's also Santiago's direct boss. Baker wasn't available at City Hall when we went there, and we don't know if Baker knew of the alleged conspiracy before today. Well, again, City Manager Teresa Wilson, who refused to talk with me about the Navarro case on camera, did agree to talk with our Megan Norman. Megan, again, just returning from City Hall with that interview where Teresa Wilson told her that Captain Dave Navarro is no longer employed with the City of Columbia Police Department.
Fired. So Captain Navarro has gone to SLED, told them this, his story.
Yes.
Where is SLED in any kind of investigation? Have they started one?
They haven't. They're not calling it an investigation right now. We got an email earlier today from Tom Berry, SLED spokesman, who said that they have received a complaint from the City of Columbia. He wouldn't specify what the allegations were, but they are reviewing it right now and have yet to make a determination of whether they will investigate it.
And Jody, let me just ask you about this and let our viewers know about this. We've been working on this story really since last week, hearing word of some sort of investigation, trying to get information from the city, asking them for their response, response to everything that's going on.
Right.
Have not been able to get anything on the record until last night, but Navarro's attorney reached out to you. Do you know why he did that? And you actually sat down with him for quite a length of time. Yeah,
we were there and left around midnight at the law firm in Orangeburg, and they wanted to get their story out because Navarro said he felt that the city would try to somehow discredit what he was about to tell us on the record and what he told SLED in his complaint, the allegations he made to SLED regarding this sort of larger conspiracy within the city. So he wanted to try to get out in front of it, tell his story before whatever, as Navarro called it, and he said it in the interview, before they fabricated something to discredit him.
This is a very acidic, caustic allegation on Navarro's part. So what kind of evidence does he have to show this isn't some made-up story?
Well, there's a sworn affidavit that he signed under oath last night that was notarized. His attorney handed me that before we left that interview. They do plan to address this employment matter with the city. I don't know whether they're going to, if it's in lawsuit land at this point in time or not, but Navarro's on the record under oath. This is his story, and it's a conversation that he says he had between the last 6 to 8 months with Santiago over lunch in downtown Columbia, 3 separate occasions. That third time, Navarro says, came last Tuesday when he told Santiago, this is it. I'm going to report it. That's when Navarro says the next day, after he reported it to SLED, he was suspended.
All right. Well, again, we've been working to get the city's side of this story.
Yep.
They finally agreed to sit down with Megan, denied your request, but sat down with Megan just a little while ago. In fact, she's just getting back from that interview. So we will have their side of this story as well, and obviously a big story that we will continue to follow.
Yeah, we'll be back at 6 o'clock with another angle.
All right,
Thank you,
Jody, thank you very much.
You got it.
WIS investigative reporter Jody Barr joins us live in the studio. Jody, this is a story that you've been looking into for the better part of a week now. What have you learned?
Well, what we know tonight is Captain Dave Navarro says he's the victim of a retaliation campaign from the most powerful law enforcer in the city. Navarro, who lost his job this afternoon, says after he filed a complaint with SLED regarding a plot to frame Columbia's assistant city manager, the city went after him.
After the phone call from SLED, I immediately, felt a retaliation from Chief Santiago. I mean, things began to move immediately.
Interim Columbia Police Chief Ruben Santiago suspended Navarro last Wednesday, but would not say anything about what he's accused of until today. City Manager Teresa Wilson fired Navarro this afternoon, accusing him of recording a conversation with the chief, gossip, and insubordination. Navarro says the only reason he was suspended in the first place was because he blew the whistle on a Santiago plot to frame Assistant City Manager Allison Baker. Do you believe to this day the reason you're suspended now from the Columbia Police Department is because you blew the whistle?
I blew the whistle on Ruben Santiago, 100%. The only reason right now I am suspended without pay, and I have no idea why I'm being suspended for, is because Ruben Santiago is trying to work another scheme as the one he was trying to work on Mr. Baker and try to figure out what can he fabricate on Dave Navarro so that he can do whatever it is he's going to try to do and retaliate against David Navarro and his family.
Santiago agreed to interview with us regarding the allegations at 2:30 this afternoon. We waited for 40 minutes at the police department, but Santiago never showed up for the interview. I still haven't been able to ask Santiago directly about the allegations. Navarro says Santiago met with him 3 times over the last 6 to 8 months to work out a conspiracy to get Public Safety Director Allison Baker fired. The plan, Navarro says, Santiago wanted to plant a stolen gun and cocaine in Baker's car, claim an anonymous tip came in, and arrest Allison Baker.
This person that claims to be an honest person, a sworn law enforcement to serve the citizens of Columbia, was planning to put a stolen pistol, and specifics, Jody. He didn't just tell me a gun. He told me, Dave, it must be a stolen gun. And he also said cocaine. And I asked him that question, why cocaine, Chief? Nobody would believe that Mr. Allison Baker would use crack cocaine. And there was no doubt in my mind that he meant what he was planning to do. He meant it, and he was gonna carry it through if he found the right person to do it with. But Dave Navarro was not going to be the person to do that for him.
Ruben Santiago, North City Manager Teresa Wilson would talk with us about the conspiracy allegations today. As for Dave Navarro, he's fired and tells me he's planning to address that with the city in the near future.
Jody, I know some people will see this report and as we follow the story and say it sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
Why does Navarro say that he believes Santiago approached him about this alleged scheme?
Well, Navarro is 5th or 6th in line in succession at the Columbia Police Department. But when at this time, he was the head of the drug suppression team. And Navarro says Santiago wanted him to listen to the scanner when he got a call that there was a stolen gun with no serial number on it and powder cocaine inside of a house. Santiago and Navarro, according to Navarro, they would go to the scene, clear the officers. That is what they would take. And that's ultimately what they planned, according to Navarro, to plant in Allison Baker's car.
So what's the whole motive? What would be the fallout of that?
Well, Navarro says the plan was, the reason this whole conspiracy came up in the beginning was that they wanted Allison Baker out. He's the assistant city manager, but he's also the head of public safety. They wanted Randy Scott, the former police chief, in that position. Santiago then would become chief, and then David Navarro would then become deputy chief. Number 2 in line. Navarro, though, in the end says he didn't want any part of that, went to SLED, and then we are where we are today.
All right, so, and we should point out that after agreeing to do interviews with you, the city manager, Teresa Wilson, and the interim police chief, Ruben Santiago, then backed out of those interviews. They did agree to talk with our Megan Norman late this afternoon, and Megan just came back to the newsroom from getting the city's response to David Navarro's accusations. She joins us live in the newsroom with more. And Megan, to sum it up in a sentence, they say the whole thing's made up.
Judy, that's absolutely correct. Now, Wilson did say that Navarro was in fact fired today after being on suspension since July 10th. She says that she gave him notice through his attorney, and she says it was for a multitude of reasons, including insubordination, the unauthorized recording of a phone conversation, as well as the shredding of documents. Both Wilson and interim police chief Ruben Santiago say they are puzzled as to the origins of Dave Navarro's accusations, but the city denies all of the accusations. He claims that you asked him to plant a stolen gun and cocaine in Allison Baker's car, and apparently that was to happen as soon as a stolen gun was found and as soon as cocaine was found. Did you ask him to do this?
Absolutely not. I find it ridiculous that somebody would even say that. And, you know, it's very disturbing that he would bring those allegations up. I would like to say, or I'd like to see if he has any something that could back up or substantiate that. I mean, what he's alleging is criminal, and what he's alleging, is really trying to discredit me.
Why now? You know, if indeed you have some reason to believe that there's any truth to some of these things that you're saying, well, we have an ethics policy here at the city. I mean, certainly wouldn't you have brought that to the attention of the former city manager or myself?
Both Teresa Wilson and Ruben Santiago say maybe Navarro's dissatisfaction over a lateral move could have prompted these accusations, but they're only speculating that at this point. Coming up tonight at 11, I'll have much more from my interviews, as well as a look at Dave Navarro's personnel file. For now, live in the newsroom, Megan Norman, WIS News 10.
Investigating the stories that matter to you. Live from Columbia in high definition. This is WIS News 10.
You need to run the department with integrity, and by doing the right thing, and everything else will fall in place. And of course, I think that once I put my foot down on that, I became an immediate threat to him.
Why would you try to discredit somebody over your personal actions? What was it that made you feel like you were being done wrong? What is it?
Turmoil at One Justice Square with no permanent police chief in place. The one filling the void is fending off accusations tonight of a conspiracy.
It has already left one officer fired for putting the Columbia Police Department's reputation on the line. At least that is his position tonight. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Judy Gatson.
And I'm Ben Hoover. Tonight, our investigation into why a high-ranking Columbia police officer lost his job today continues.
The city administrator fired former CPD Captain Dave Navarro today, nearly 1 week after interim police chief Ruben Santiago suspended him without pay. Now, Navarro says the city went after him for tipping SLED off to a conspiracy to frame the assistant city manager.
WIS lead investigative reporter Jody Barr broke this story earlier today. And Jody, even Navarro admits that the story is hard to believe.
Yeah, when I sat down with him exactly 24 hours ago, the first thing he told me was, this sounds like something right out of Hollywood. But Dave Navarro swore under oath in this signed affidavit that the story of the conspiracy to frame a Columbia city official is nothing but the truth and the whole truth.
Ruben Santiago is not the person that he's portraying to be. He may speak well on TV, but there is a second face. There's a second face behind Ruben Santiago.
As of lunchtime today, Dave Navarro was a captain in the Columbia Police Department. That's until City Manager Teresa Wilson fired him, accusing him of insubordination, gossip, and secretly recording a conversation with the police chief. All allegations, Dave Navarro says, are lies. The real reason he's out of the department, Navarro says, he told SLED about Interim Chief Ruben Santiago's plan to frame his boss, Assistant City Manager Allison Baker. Do you believe to this day the reason you're suspended now from the Columbia Police Department is because you blew the whistle?
I blew the whistle on Ruben Santiago, 100%. The only reason right now I am suspended without pay, and I have no idea why I'm being suspended for, is because Ruben Santiago is trying to work another scheme as the one he was trying to work on Mr. Baker, and try to figure out what can he fabricate on Dave Navarro so that he can do whatever it is he's going to try to do and retaliate against David Navarro and his family.
The conspiracy, according to Navarro, Santiago would plant a stolen gun and cocaine in Baker's car, claim an anonymous tip led cops to Baker's car, then they'd arrest him. The plan, Navarro says, former Chief Randy Scott would take Baker's job. Santiago would take over as police chief, and Navarro's payoff, he'd become the deputy chief. Should Allison Baker be concerned?
Yes, of course he should be concerned. It was his career. It was his freedom. This man could have ended up in prison. He could have ended up in jail. He'd have lost his job.
Are you angry?
I'm very angry. I'm disgusted. I'm very sick. I haven't been able to sleep. I haven't been able to eat because I'm very concerned about. I am the main provider in my family, Jody. And you know, this is not after 20 years of military service and then 14 years. That's 34 years of serving my country and my community. This is not the way I wanted my law enforcement career to end.
What would you, if you had the opportunity to sit down with Ruben Santiago, what would you tell him tonight?
I would look at him in the face and I will call him a liar, and I will tell him that the truth will come out, and I would challenge him. I would challenge him now that this is an opportunity for him to change his life, and all those times that he has told me that one of the main reasons that he believed in Dave Navarro, because this is my level of integrity, this would be a great opportunity for him to change his life and do the right thing for himself, his family, and the citizens of Columbia.
Well, the city accused Dave Navarro of secretly recording former police chief Randy Scott. We're filing a Freedom of Information Act request in the morning to see the contents of that recording and what proof the city has that Dave Navarro actually made that recording. Navarro told me he's very willing to cooperate with any investigation, whether it's SLED or the FBI conducting that, and he would even go as far as taking a polygraph to prove he's telling the truth.
Well, when somebody comes out with accusations like this, of course you want to see evidence that it happened or didn't happen. It's a he said sort of situation, but is there any evidence to show that this happened according to Navarro?
Well, you've got his word,
yeah.
Santiago's word right now, but you've also got the signed affidavit under oath that Dave Navarro is saying this is the truth, and he's willing to stake his reputation and potentially his freedom if what he's saying is not the truth, and he's willing to go to court to fight it if he has to.
And SLED just reviewing the case at this point.
That's a word from SLED. They are not calling it an investigation, and they're not even telling us what allegation they got, who it came from, but it does involve the Columbia Police Department.
All right, Jody, we'll know you'll stay on top of that angle of the story and keep us up to date with any new developments. As we mentioned earlier, city officials would not talk with Jody, but the city manager, Teresa Wilson, and interim police chief Ruben Santiago did agree to sit down with our Megan Norman late this afternoon.
Megan joins us in the studio with more on how they're responding to Navarro's accusations. Megan.
Ben and Judy, the city is adamantly denying any kind of involvement in any kind of conspiracy. Both Teresa Wilson and Ruben Santiago say they are puzzled by Navarro's motive. They believe this all stems from resistance to change and Navarro's dissatisfaction over a mandated lateral move within the department.
I actually considered him a very close friend of mine. So I'm very, very surprised and at the same time concerned and hurt and puzzled. Really, that's the big question or big statement. It's puzzled as why he would feel like this is his lateral move was such a big deal.
Interim Police Chief Ruben Santiago contends moving Captain Dave Navarro from commander of the Community Services Division to captain over the West Region must have created some animosity.
For the things that he's alleging, I find myself try not to laugh at that. I mean, you're talking about something that you would see on television.
David Navarro claims Santiago repeatedly asked him to plant a stolen gun and cocaine in the car of Assistant City Manager Allison Baker. Chief Santiago calls them false, malicious allegations. Did you ask him to do this?
Absolutely not. I find it ridiculous that somebody would even say that. And, you know, it's very disturbing that he would bring those allegations up. I would like to say, or I'd like to see if he has any something that can back up or substantiate that. I mean, what he's alleging is criminal. And what he's alleging, is really trying to discredit me.
On Monday, Navarro was fired. City Manager Teresa Wilson calls Navarro's recent behavior, quote, bizarre and against city policy.
I am comfortable, quite confident with the way we documented and handled this termination up to this point, because they are for acts that he did. Clearly.
Wilson says Navarro was fired for several reasons. Insubordination, including resisting change and spreading rumors. The unauthorized recording of a phone conversation between Navarro and then Deputy Chief Ruben Santiago. And finally, shredding unknown documents.
He proceeded, to discredit why or have angst about that move. In addition to that, just began this rumor, innuendo, accusations, really bizarre behavior, quite frankly, from my standpoint. I have no reason to understand what all of that's about. But from a management standpoint, I don't tolerate that kind of behavior. We don't have time for that anywhere in the city.
Santiago says the recorded phone conversation was about Navarro's move to the West region.
You can hear the phone ringing and then me picking up and having a conversation about it. And he kept going on and on a rate, using a lot of foul language, and you could tell he was up and down. And I kept telling him, I said, David, this is a positive.
Wilson and Santiago say that recording happened in January, and Navarro says he was approached several times in recent months by Santiago to conspire against Allison Baker. The city says the timing of his actions and accusations is suspicious.
If you look at the timeline, it's retaliatory. It's retaliatory because he did not want to change.
Again, the city firmly denies Navarro's accusations. We will, of course, continue to follow this developing story. Live in the studio, Megan Norman, WIS News 10.